If you followed me for any amount of time on Twitter, you know that I talk massive shit about gaming journalism. It's pretty bad. Journalism in general is bad, especially these days. So when I set out to make reviews, you can bet your ass I decided I'd do things a bit differently. So many reviewers play 4 hours of a game, call it a day, write a scathing review, and completely miss out on the core points of the game. So I came up with a personal code on how to review a game. Those being 1. Play to completion or until I've hit a minimum of 20 hours. 2. Try to see things as objectively as possible. And most importantly, 3. Never insert my own political ideology unless it's a joke. So, you can color me surprised when in my first review, I'm going to be breaking my first rule. Because for the love of Christ, I can't play any more Craftopia. Definitely not for another 10 hours. Alright, so now that we got all that lovely bullshit out of the way, let me explain why I even purchased Craftopia. It's actually pretty simple. You see, I borrowed my old copy of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild to a friend of mine, and his Switch was stolen, and with it, my game was as well. I don't want to ask him for money because shit happens, and to be honest, Breath of the Wild was never my favorite game. Blasphemous, I know. That said, probably within the last 2 months, I've had this annoying urge to play Breath of the Wild. I'm also way too cheap to be buying a $60 USD game again, considering I've already purchased it once. So when I saw Craftopia being advertised, I think on Instagram, I was like, yeah, fuck it, and I purchased it. Why am I writing a review on a game I purchased on a whim? Because I can. Right off the bat, I probably made this review sound like I'm going to absolutely shit all over this game. Well, that's not necessarily true. There are some really great parts of the game. The base is here. There are small... Oh god, what was that? That was my noise suppressor being a little overzealous. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to re-record all the lines where this happens. I went and tried to edit a bunch of the stuff out or change it so it sounds relatively normal, but there's only so much you can do, and I'm way too tired to actually re-record any of the lines. So, yeah, that's the thing. I'll get it fixed next time, I think. Things that could botch the experience for casuals or people who don't know what the hell early access means. And clearly, since I'm doing a review on an early access game, I don't know what early access means. Craftopia is a mixture of many mechanics into one game. Crafting in an open world with simple survival mechanics, as well as farming, hack and slash combat, base building, and automation. Most of which are all incorporated into an RPG skill tree. Unfortunately, with such a wide scope, it makes polishing all of these aspects incredibly difficult. As of writing the review, all of these are implemented and work to a varying degree. When you launch the game, you are greeted to a bright, idyllic landscape accompanied by an absolutely beautiful title screen theme. These two things never change. The graphics pay homage to the cel-shaded majesty of games like Breath of the Wild, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and the Tales of series. And the music accompanying starts with a simple piano and ramps up slowly into something more. It gives a relaxed and chilled vibe that really sets the tone of the game. I find myself on a mysterious island surrounded by a bunch of weirdos that want to give me information on how to play the game. I completely disregard them and immediately start crafting resources. Thus, I'm forced into the general gameplay loop of crafting games. Find resource, extract resource. If you fail to extract resource, craft a tool that can, repeat, and success. This is a process I personally find tedious. Content tends to be locked behind these resource walls, and those resource walls become a problem very quickly. Imagine Donald Trump's border wall. but even the smoothest of brains doesn't want it. One of the things I struggled with during my time with Craftopia is its inventory system. It doesn't work too well, and it's an absolute pain to manage. Inventory management is already the bane of my existence in gaming in general and in real life. However, the jank of this particular system convinced me that God really does hate me. It's hard to drop items, and this is made worse by how the game separates similar items. You see, instead of having a pelt, you'll have a fox pelt, and then when you kill a moose, you'll receive a moose pelt. While they both take up only one space, this makes dropping items on the fly difficult. There also appears to be different types of ore. So you'll wind up with 4 of one types of iron ore and 8 of another type of iron ore. I don't understand why this is a thing. The differences of ore have not noticeably changed anything for me. There are no recipes that require a specific type of iron ore, so this feels needlessly convoluted. Eventually, I was able to start crafting more advanced creations, like farms, power generators, other things. Some of these I found oddly implemented. For instance, to create a power generator, I needed to build the power generator. Then I needed an animal to run the hamster wheel to power it. So then I had to capture the world's most right-angled Pokeball to capture an animal. And this was not fun, because throwing in this game is harder than throwing a baseball in real life.
Bruh.
That and the cubes full like a ball. You're not going to be able to catch those capture cubes or whatever the hell they call them in this game. So after committing animal cruelty on many animals, I finally managed to capture a fox. I excitedly brought it to my power plant and threw it in there. It ran the wheel for a whole 5 minutes before dying from exhaustion. I don't believe I can get it off the wheel, because the capture prism, I believe that's what it's called, breaks when you release it. This goes the same way with the farm. I believe this is set up to encourage automation in the game, but I felt burned after that one. One of the other odd choices were vehicles breaking down during use. I spent an hour building a motorcycle only to have it rapidly deteriorate faster than my latest Tinder interaction. I just don't understand that one. Perhaps they'll add a need for fuel in the future and take the vehicle dying thing out? That would be nice. Unfortunately, with my time in the game, I never experimented with the automation aspect. That may have been an interesting portion, but around this time I was increasingly losing my urge to continue crafting. One of the other selling points of this game, at least for me, was the dungeons and combat. Now that I could defend myself, I eventually came upon a dungeon portal. These function similar to the shrines in Breath of the Wild, albeit a whole lot more generic. The first island has 2 dungeons, the first being Dungeon of Island, which is a very simple combat-themed dungeon. As of right now, these dungeons are a straight shot through 2 rooms infested by respawning monsters. Once you eliminate the set amount of monsters, the next room opens. After completing these 2 rooms, you arrive at the dungeon boss. As of right now, I've only found 1 type of dungeon boss, which is fun at first, but it gets boring when you've killed it 5 times. Mixed with that and the boring dungeon layout, and likely placeholder enemies, it starts to get very samey very fast. The second dungeon is Speed Trial Beginner. In this dungeon you race down a narrow corridor trying to finish on a really poorly controlled hoverboard. It would be actually pretty difficult if there was less time. In fact, during my first run-through of this dungeon, my hoverboard managed to no-clip into the back rooms, and I was still able to finish the race thing by running the last quarter of it. Every time you complete a dungeon, you get a growth slate as well as 5 treasure chests. You'll probably be able to take all of the contents of 2 of the treasure chests. I've also run into a couple other types of dungeons on other islands, but they all have the same kind of generic layout problems. This probably won't be an issue in the future because they'll likely add more distinct dungeons. Speaking of dungeons, I should probably talk about the combat. As of right now, the combat's alright. It's rather limited for what it is, and there are many areas it can improve on, like more weapon types. Single-handed weapons feel decent. Bows work the way they should, but once we start talking about two-handed weapons, things go south fast. Two-handers hit super hard, but the controls fight you worse than a teenager that has just been told not to do something. The odd angle of the first swing and the slow follow-ups make you a target for everything, which is hilarious, because the NPC AI is downright retarded. Remember how I said there's RPG mechanics in this game? You do level up in this game, and pretty quickly you'll start leveling to a point where most monsters hit you with 1s and 2s. There is an exception to this rule. This is the gender reveal enthusiasts. Those guys will mess you up super bad. I found myself only dying from fire and when I'm accessing menus, and I did not notice enemies coming up and just whacking away at me. And the last thing I want to touch on is the world. Overall, the islands they designed for this game are beautiful. Differing biomes providing different hazards and different ambient feels. It's a beautiful game. Unfortunately, it's held back by the island traveling system. This is in multiple ways the most disappointing thing I've experienced in this early access. So remember how I said that resource gathering is a content wall? Well, to travel to other islands, you need to build an altar of travel, which is a wall, by the way. Then tribute increasingly rare resources to travel to another island. Nearing the end of my 10 hours of Craftopia, I found myself just gathering enough resources to travel to another island, and that wasn't enjoyable either. The game has absolutely beautiful landscapes, but even on the bigger islands it only takes 35 to 45 minutes for the magic to fade when I completely realize the island is smaller than my one apartment bedroom. This absolutely sucks all of the wonder out of it. This brings up a further problem of rendering base building irrelevant, which, by the way, the building in this game is rather horrid when it comes to controls. Like, Christ, Fortnite does it better. That's all I'm giving you, Fortnite. Players will be hopping islands throughout the game, meaning having any permanent structure is a complete waste of time, unless that player is a lover of aesthetics and architecture. Craftopia does not have a roadmap available to the public, so the future is vague. Although they have mentioned adding more playable races, weapons, more bosses, as well as working on their multiplayer. But for now, we're being kept in the dark. Since general bug fixes are usually given, I'm assuming that they'll be fleshing out content like dungeons, making the non-hostile NPCs a bit more relevant, as well as more enemy types, a quest system, and hopefully they can get that inventory system to be a little bit more cooperative. Personally, I'd like to see them completely scrap the island hopping mechanic and go for a large, randomly generated world that functions similarly to those in Terraria in terms of progression. This would bring back the magic of a boundless world that would last longer than 45 minutes per island. From what I've seen in this early access, it's clear that Craftopia does have the basics down. They're functional, and right now it's a matter of getting rid of the jank, adding more features, and fleshing out that world. I believe a lot of the design choices are placeholders until they can adapt the systems to function more fluidly. This game does have incredible potential. However, I cannot suggest you purchase it at the asked price unless you really want to support the devs or are a crafting game fanatic. Otherwise, I'd wait for some big updates the full release, or a really nice sale. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching my review on Craftopia, especially if you've made it all the way to the end. Right now, I'm moving out to a new apartment. I'm moving out to a one-bedroom apartment. That's where I got that one-bedroom joke, by the way. So, things are gonna slow to a grind yet again on the YouTubes, and I'm still on hiatus over on Twitch. So, hopefully, by mid-October, I will be doing Twitch again and all set up and, you know, trying to get more YouTube stuff in. That said, tune in next week when I review Cuties.